Good morning, everyone, and good morning to those of you who are online. Brian and Carmenza were supposed to do the talk or service this morning, thank you. And they got pulled away, and so Chandi and I will be doing service. And congratulations to you all for showing up. That was quite a storm last night, and tonight proves to be another one, so charge your phones, get your batteries working on your flashlights, and don't go through what I went through this morning. So the reading this morning is from Rays of the One Light, and these are weekly commentaries from the Bhagavad Gita and the Bible written by Swami Kriyananda. Did God create the universe or become it? Truth is one and eternal, and realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. The Gospel of St. John, chapter 1, contains a passage that explains the essential truth that creation is a process of becoming. The universe is not separate from God the Creator, but a part of Him, even as our own dream creations during sleep are figments, even as our own dream creations during sleep are figments of our consciousness. God's is the life, God's the reality. Not a melody could be composed, not a poem written, were the melody and the poem not already there, simply waiting to be expressed. In Him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. Ego-directed desire is like static. It distorts the radioed messages of infinity. But the pristine impulse from the divine, undistorted by limitation and delusion, is the life that gives rise to all that is. And as the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita states, I am the fluidity of water. I am the silver light of the moon and the golden light of the sun. I am the Om, chanted in all the Vedas, the cosmic sound moving as if soundlessly through the ether. I am the manliness of men. I am the good sweet smell of the moist earth. I am the luminescence of fire, the sustaining life of all living creatures. I am self-offering in those who would expand their little lives into cosmic life. O Arjuna, know me as the eternal seed of all creatures. In the perceptive, I am their perception. In the great, I am their greatness. In the glorious, it is I who am their glory. And thus through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om. Well, the gopis, for those of you who don't know who the gopis were, they were spirits that were in Vrindavan with Krishna. They were actually the milkmaids who lived there, and they were very advanced spirits. But they would go every day to the river Jamuna to meet with Krishna and to offer him fresh cheese. And this was something that just delighted them, and it delighted him, and he was so thrilled by it because they were so devotional in their offering. And one day they went down to the river, and to their dismay, the river had risen so high that they couldn't cross it. So they thought, well, let's go to Vyasa. Let's go down to Vyasa, who was on the same side that they were on, and he was a great devotee of Krishna's. And they said, let's go and find him and let's ask him to create a miracle. So they went down to his hut, and Vyasa was inside, and they explained to him, they said, "Sir, please, can you help us? We give Krishna cheese every day, and today we can't because the river is so high." And he looked at them, and he acted angry, and he said, "Krishna, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. What about Vyasa? How come nobody ever says anything about Vyasa? How come you never offer me cheese?" And they kind of looked at each other, and they thought, I guess we better offer him some cheese. And so they pulled out a little piece, and they said, "Sir, can we offer this to you?" And he took it, and he took a bite. And then he reached over, and he grabbed more, and he grabbed more, and more, and more, and more, and more. And finally, he was just kind of waddling on the ground, rolling on the ground. And he turned over, and he stood up, and he went down to the river. And he stood there, and he said, "River Jamuna, if I have not eaten anything, rise up and part." And the gopis looked at each other, and they said, "He's like a little pig the way he ate, and he's lying. He ate. We saw him eat." And then all of a sudden, the river rose, and it parted, and there was a wall of water on either side, and there was a small path for them to run through it and go over to Krishna's side. And that's what they did. They didn't even stop and look at but Vyasa. They just took off, and they took their opportunity, and they went through, and they were yelling, "Krishna, Krishna, where are you? Where are you? We have your cheese, Krishna." And he wasn't anywhere in sight. And they walked by his hut, and his door was ajar, and they looked in, and they saw him lying on the couch and a beautiful smile on his face. And they said, "Krishna, why are you here? We have your cheese for you." And he said, "Oh, no. I can't eat another bite." They said, "What do you mean you can't eat another bite? Who fed you? Who gave you cheese?" And he said, "Oh, that fellow Vyasa." He said, "He just was thinking of me the whole time." He said, "And I am so full right now, I just couldn't eat another bite. I just want to lay down and go to sleep." And the reason Master would tell this story is to show how egoless the Masters are. And he said, absence of the ego is not that self-consciousness ceases to exist. He said, it's the sense of self made infinite. And like his poem, Samadhi, ever present, ever flowing, I, everywhere. And that's the consciousness of the Master. And what our task is to see beyond the creation, which was Vyasa's body, physical body, who took in the cheese, but he offered it to the divine. He offered it to what's behind everything, which is I, everywhere. And that's the consciousness of the Master. And for us, we want to see, it's wise of us, of course, to try to see God in everything and everyone, but it's a lot easier sometimes to see it through them. But what we have to do is be mindful of the fact that their personalities and who they are or what we see, like for instance, Swami Sri Yukteswar, who has a very different personality than Yogananda, we have to get beyond that. We have to get beyond that personality and understand, because they are in the purest form of the divine. Understand that it is the divine that we're attracted to, that is the divine that we're magnetized to. It's not their personality. It's not the creation, it's the creator. If we are worshiping the creation, then we're idol worshiping. So we always need to go beyond that. There was a disciple of Master's who Master sensed had a slight attachment to him. And so he would just ignore them. And he'd walk into a room, he'd say hello to everyone, and completely ignore this disciple, who was a very devoted, strong disciple of his. And finally, this disciple just had it, and finally just went inward and said, I don't want him anymore. I just don't want him. I just want you, God. And as soon as they did that, Master came and said, very good, you learned. This person was seeing finally, for the first time, that it wasn't God, or it wasn't Master, it was God. And it's very subtle, and we get caught up in it. Vyasa, who, by the way, was the author of the Bhagavad Gita, had drawn to him a son through his wife that was extremely advanced spiritually. And they named him Sukadev. And Sukadev, at the age of 7, had learned everything that Vyasa had to teach him. He was well versed in the scriptures. And at the age of 7, he decided that he was going to renounce everything and go off and become an ascetic, or find his guru, is what he wanted to do. And so Vyasa geared him towards King Janaka. And King Janaka was the king of the province, and Vyasa, or Sukadev, decided to go, and he walked into the palace, this extraordinary palace, and he saw King Janaka sitting on a throne made of diamonds and emeralds and gold, and he was smoking a very ornate pipe, and he was just sitting there, and Janaka walked in, or Sukadev walked in, and he couldn't believe it. He just thought, how could my father send me to such a materialist? And he turned on his heels and he walked out. And so King Janaka called a couple of his messengers. He says, go and find Sukadev. Bring him back here. Command that he come back here. And so they went and they brought him back. And he walked in and he met King Janaka. They introduced each other. And then King Janaka immediately went into this discourse of the divine. And he went on for like about 4 hours, to the point where Sukadev was actually getting a little hungry and kind of looking at his watch. But then he thought, no, I'm not going to interrupt this. I'm not going to interrupt this divine discourse. And after time, 2 of the messengers came running in, and they said, King Janaka, the province is on fire. Please come and help us. Come and help us to put it out. Would you please come and supervise it? And he said, oh, no, you do that. He said, I'm busy. I'm busy right now. I'm engaged in this conversation with God. He said, you go. So they turned and they went. And then about an hour later, they came back. King Janaka, the fire is coming up to the palace. Please, won't you, or at least escape, won't you leave? And he said, no, don't worry. I'm fine. We're fine. We're just in the middle of this conversation with God. You go. Then another hour went by. They came in again. This time they were really disheveled. They had ash all over them, and they kind of dragged themselves in, and they said, King Janaka, the flames are coming right up to your throne. Please, won't you leave? Won't you go? And Janaka looked at them and he said, oh, I am in the protection of God's arms. No, I'm fine. And Sukadev was sitting there, and he looked down and he saw a couple of his books, and the flames were kind of approaching his books, and he was trying to blow them out and stop the fire. And he looked over, and King Janaka looked at him, and then he waved his hand, and the fire stopped. And he said, you see, you're going to go be an ascetic. You have these 2 little books, and you're concerned about them. He said, I have this whole castle. I have this whole province. I have everything you could ever want, and it doesn't affect me in the least. And so we have to learn, like the masters, to be detached. To be detached from everything. Master loved impersonally. Master was criticized. He was condemned at the time that he was on this planet. He had articles written about him. He had people betray him. Master was very clear. He was very clear. He was very honest. But he worked with honesty that was beneficial. He didn't just bombast his honesty all over the place. He worked very, very consciously. And he would say, my only purpose here is to help you to find God. He loved impersonally. And what does that mean? That means to love without wanting anything in return. And that's how Master loved. And that's how he came on this planet as an avatar. And Swami has even said, even in our most personal relationships, our marriages, our friendships, we've got to learn how to love impersonally. And as the reading was talking this morning, as Chandi was reading about how do you attract love, divine love? It's through selflessness. And Swami has said, if you can serve selflessly without attachment, then you can lift yourself up to the level of a master, and then you can really commune with him because you are doing what the master does. You're living selflessly for others. And Master said that one should think always of God. Ask him in everything that you do to do it through you. Think of God as you start on the path of your material or spiritual duty. Think of God with each footfall of your advancing feet as you make your way carefully and joyously over the broadening road of fulfillment. Think of him after you have traveled far on your life's path and finished your progressive action. Ask God to be with you when you by your own will choose good actions. Think of him while you are eating it. And then when you have finished eating, think of God. Think of God before choosing an action. Think of him before performing all action. And think of him after the action is performed. Create God-like habits by thinking of him as beauty and fragrance in the flowers, color in the rainbow, love, wisdom, and power in all human minds, and vastness in the ocean and skies. And think of him as life in the breeze, vitality in the sunshine, as peace in the moonbeams, reason in the mind, rest in dreams, joy in sleep, perennial, ever-new bliss in meditation, and as love in all hearts. In short, think of him always.